I also want to talk about this, what's taking place in D.C. Carson Wentz says, by some accounts, gotten off to a spotty start during his time in training camp with the Washington Commanders. So he sat down with a guy named Scott Abraham, who works for the ABC affiliate in D.C. I want you to listen to the questions as well as the answers. Scott Abraham's the interviewer. He's talking with Carson Wentz. Take a listen.
There's been kind of a narrative out there here in training camp that you've been a little inaccurate on your throws. Consistently inconsistent has been a kind of a terminology. How would you assess your performance in training camp, and is that characterization fair?
Yeah, I mean, for one, it's camp. I think I didn't know that, so thank you.
Yep.
But
I know, because I know you told me you don't read that stuff.
At the same time, I'm my biggest critic, so I come back after practice and I'm kicking myself over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays.
Real talk here, Carson. It's been well documented. Philly didn't want you. Indy didn't want you. Do you think this is your last chance to prove that you can be a starting quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, I don't really think about all that stuff. For me, I'm playing the game that I love, and I have the most confidence of anybody in myself to deliver, to play at a high level, to be a part of something special here with this team. And so I don't put all that pressure on myself. I don't put people can feel that way. People can say what they want, and I have no issue with that. That is what it is. But for me, I don't think in those terms. Okay,
so look, I thought Carson's answers were perfect. Right? There's nothing wrong with his answers. The questions were a mess. And I saw this Jason Wright, who's the president of the Commanders. He quote tweeted this interview and wrote, "Thankfully, Carson demonstrated grace and class in his response to this pompous, unprofessional mess. I recognize you made a living on childlike provocation, but it needs to be called out. Don't expect special access, and good luck building rapport with the guys at Scott 7 News. It's not that the guys can't take criticism. Just be journalistic and follow standard practices. Others have found a way to do both." I don't know if he didn't follow standard practices of journalism. I think that's unfair. I'm dealing with this stuff as well. So here's what I believe. People don't know how to ask questions, and they load them up with commentary, and you're trying to elicit a response when, if you play back the first question only, which there's a multitude of questions, but he actually had the right question buried in there. Okay? The right question is, how do you think you played? Right? How did you characterize your performance thus far in camp? But listen to all the other hullabaloo, all the other multitude of questions and statements that are made inside of it. Go ahead.
There's been kind of a narrative out there here in training camp that you've been a little inaccurate.
That doesn't need to exist.
Your throws, consistently inconsistent has been a kind of a terminology. How would you assess your performance in training camp, and is that characterization?
That's it. Well, how would you assess your performance in training camp? That's the question. That's the question. But he doesn't leave it at that question. He goes on still in that question. Keep going.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean.
How would you assess it, and is that fair? No. You're asking a bunch of questions. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm the world's greatest interviewer. I think Dan Patrick's the best interviewer that we got going in national sports radio. He's awesome. And he follows a similar sort of plan. But this is I think more of, this is one of those, I think more of Carson Wentz now than I did before the interview. So you ask him, how would you assess? And then if you want to come back in terms of some sort of narrative, you can simply say there has been some discussion in the media over issues with accuracy. How do you feel like you've been in terms of being accurate? That's it. Allow them. Instead, you're putting him in a position of being defensive, and boy, Carson Wentz avoids it, right? And then the Philly didn't want you, Indy didn't want you. I mean, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? It's really easy. This is your third team. What can you take from your previous experiences that will help you with Washington? You know, how do you feel like you are viewed by the rest of your league? What do you hope to like? Just ask him. Let him answer the questions. But the Philly didn't want you, Indy didn't want you. Whew, that's what's called. Those are trigger words. And you're getting far afield from what you're supposed to do. That was a bad one. Jay Steele, what do you think?
I thought it was, what is that Galifianakis thing? Is it Between Two Ferns? I thought it was one of those. When I first saw it online last night, I thought that there was going to be a punchline and that they were like college buddies and this was a joke. When I found out that it was an actual credentialed reporter asking what he thought was actual questions, I thought it's one of the most unprofessional interviews you'll ever hear. He should never have access to the team again after that. That's like worth pulling your credentials, right? And Carson Wentz...
this is what I actually think. I truly believe this. I actually think that Washington, what they should do is, dude, like, let him have his credentials. Let him have his access. You know, you got to own, like, you have to, it's like, it's being the benevolent dictator, right? Like, I actually think if you're Washington, don't be overreactive. Do what Carson Wentz did, which is like, he wants to ask questions, he wants to make himself look like a fool, and Carson Wentz like, nah, we'll keep giving you got access, go in the locker room, face those guys. It's fine. Don't cut him off, because what that does is, that makes it so that the others will feel under pressure to ask somehow softball questions. You don't have to ask softball questions. You don't have to ask hard questions. Just ask the questions, let them answer, follow up, know how to do the job. I had this, you guys don't know this because you didn't work with me then. Chad Steele, I consider a friend. He's done PR for the entire league at the Super Bowl. Forever, he's been the guy with the Baltimore Ravens. He's seen as, if not the best in the business, one of the 2 or 3 best in the business. Obviously, his sister is Sage Steele. Okay, you guys. Chad Steele is the good-looking, light-skinned black guy, mixed race black guy who you see at the Super Bowl, usually walking next to the game-winning quarterback. Like he's that guy. He's not security. He's actually PR. He's just fit enough to look like he's security. So if you go back, oh God, this is 2012's season. 2012. Ray Rice had fumbled a couple times with the Ravens early in the year, but he'd come back and he had a game-winning touchdown after fumbling early in the game, or after fumbling in previous games. And so at some point, I asked him a question because he was joking about the fumbling thing. And I said something along the lines of, is it like the program where John Harbaugh makes you carry around the football at when you go into your meetings? You guys remember that scene from the program, right? Where the running back, he kept, was it, what's his name? Epps.
Omar Epps.
Omar Epps, right, is the running back at, for whatever the school was in the program. Jay Stu, have you seen the program?
Maybe once, but I'm not very well versed.
Ramos, have you seen the program?
I have not, Doug.
You guys haven't seen? That's a good movie. That's a good football movie.
We were just talking about this yesterday about we're not. I am personally not a big fan of sports movies.
Huh?
So, yeah, I know. I have not seen. I have never seen The Field of Dreams.
I'm not a huge Field of Dreams guy.
Okay, but
I also think like do you not like Bull Durham?
I did, but see, I've never really sat through Bull Durham
Slapshot?
either. Nope.
What? Tin Cup.
Did see Tin Cup? Yes, because yeah.
Blue Chips.
Was that the Shaquille O'Neal one?
Yeah.
Yeah, sporadic. I never sat through like here's the opening
Hoosiers?
credits. Nope.
Why not?
It just didn't. Which is funny because remember I told you the other day I saw Grease 36 times at the movie theater. Yeah. So
it's okay. I mean, it doesn't say much about you. Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. Anyway, the point is, so I hung up and I thought I thought it was fair too. Like Ray was talking about fumbling, So Ray went back into the locker room, right, and to a couple of people I know in the locker room, like I knew dudes in the Ravens locker room, kind of MF'd me up and down. And Chad was great. Chad was like, look, dude, I don't know what you said. I sent him back the entire uncut, unedited interview. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. He was just on fire, upset. I was like, dude, I wasn't unfair. I didn't feel like the questions were unfair in any way. And Chad's deal was like, look, let's just like let it simmer for a little bit. And, you know, let me work on some things or whatever. Now, the Ray Rice thing, it was, I don't know if it was later on that year or maybe it was the next year, right, where the incident occurred with his then fiance, now wife, whatever. And I've actually hung out with Ray Rice since then. And he actually, you know, he told me, he's like, dude, look, I lost my cool. I was really mad about the fumbling thing. And you were like my fourth interview of the day. And your questions weren't actually the bad ones. It was the previous questions from a previous interview. And I'd done like 4 in a row. And I just lost my cool. And you were the last one I talked to. So you were the one I mentioned. I was like, dude, come on. You like killed me to all these other guys. But we're good. And Chad and I are good. But the point is that if you cut off access as the Commanders are threatening to do, I think you make it so that it just makes it really hard for anybody to do their job. This dude didn't do a good job. He didn't do a good job. He was fishing for answers and fishing for a defensiveness that didn't exist. And credit Carson Wentz with being calm and just answering the questions. And by the way, it's also a great lesson to athletes, which is, you know, as much as the questions can be bizarre, you can answer however you want. You can still have balance, catch your breath, and answer. Which, if somebody asks you 15 questions, answer like, what's his name? Did that to me the other day, right?
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp. Like, yeah. I got a little caught up in asking, like a triple header to Cooper Kupp, and he's like, "Wait, let me answer the one I want to answer." Great, right? Because I was geeking out, I'm like up against the time clock, got to get some questions in, enjoying my conversation with Cooper Kupp, and I asked him too many, and he was like, "Great," but I actually think cutting off access is the wrong play, right? Everyone knows Scott Abraham asked terrible questions here, made himself out to look like a little bit of an ass, and all he's got to do is own it and go like, it was not how I want to look. I was unfair to Carson. My bad. And you get the stink eye from guys, but you just keep doing your job every day, and eventually it comes back around. But I think cutting off access, I think that throws stuff out there that makes it seem like you can't ask reasonable, fairly pointed questions in a fair way and do your job. I think there's a balance between the two. Yes, John Ramos.
It's funny you would say that, Doug, because literally 2 hours ago on his Twitter it says, "Thank you for all the responses to my interview with Carson Wentz. Here is a full interview." So obviously he doesn't see the same thing that you've seen. And I'm sure there's context to it, and I'm sure there was a relationship back to it. And I understand that there's a pattern you get to, but there's no like, those are bad questions. Who, what, when, why, how? Not hard. And they're just not good questions. But it's also, it also, and this is a big mistake that a lot of people make. And I think like E! News, they do this crap all the time. Like, you take random dudes' tweets, and you make them out to somehow have legitimacy. Just because somebody can comment on Twitter doesn't mean that they should be viewed as legitimate. So, you just ask Carson, how do you think you've been playing? What do you think's the thing you've done best? What are the things you need to work on the most? And you could even say, like, or if you've been at practice every day, I've seen some spots he also like passed the buck on it. Like, I've seen some times in which it felt like you were inaccurate. Like, is there in your mind, is there a need to clean anything up? Is it whatever? There's a million ways you can ask it, but those questions were bad questions. Carson handled it well. I don't think he actually needs help from the team president saying we're going to cut off access.